welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Thursday, June the 5th, 2025. And we're glad you're with us. People are just slowly coming in, and Mike will be with us here shortly. So, if you have questions or comments about anything that we talk about in the past or yesterday or whenever, or something that we haven't talked about, then please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. If you're just using the phone, you hit *6 to unmute and then *6 to mute back. And of course, if you're using the app, you can just click on the little icon to turn your audio back on, and we'll be able to have a conversation. So we've heard from several people who were at the intensive, and they were giving some awesome results of their process and being able to work with other people. And so we are glad that it's being put to use and that they keep up the momentum. You know, it's real easy. Sometimes people come to an intensive and, they're all hyped up and excited, but then they don't keep using the tools. And the next thing you know, they just kind of slide back into old habits. So continually using the tools in your life, even if there's nothing in your face, you can use the forgiveness worksheets on positive things. It doesn't always have to be negative things. If you think, someone gave you flowers and that made you happy, well, that's a worksheet, because nothing outside of you can make you happy any more than something outside of you can make you fearful or angry or sad or anything else. So you can do a worksheet on the person who gave you the flowers, and the event is that they gave you flowers and that the emotion was happy. And then you go on down. If you think that something outside of you is the cause of your happiness, then when whatever that thing is, whether it's a person, whether it's the flowers themselves, whatever, once it's not there, then your happiness goes away, if that's what creates your happiness. So you can do a worksheet on positive emotions as well as negative emotions, and bring it always back at whatever you're feeling is yours and it's inside of you. And it's not created, it can be triggered. You can have happiness and joy and all inside, and somebody being kind and giving you flowers can trigger that happiness. But if you think that that is the cause, then you've got a topic for a worksheet. And on the website, if we are updating the app momentarily. I've got the techs working on it right now. If you open the Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness app, the first home screen on it has, the wake up sheets and the commitments and events and all that. And then at the bottom of it, I just noticed this the other day, it says live talk show Monday through Friday, and it has the phone number. Well, we don't have a phone number anymore. So I've had them to take that off, and the tech actually wrote me this morning and said that, since we hadn't updated in a couple of years, that there have been new phones come out, and so upgrading the app to play on the new phones is kind of crucial. And so they're doing that on both the Android and the iPhone. So here in probably another day or two, after they make the change, they have to submit it for approval to both Apple and Google. And then once it's, yes.
Wondering, seeing as how they're going to make more extensive changes, maybe we should go ahead and put the Zoom information in.
No, because then if we change it again, there is a link on there that says listen to Mindshifters Radio, and it's a live link, and they click it and it takes them directly to the website. So I've already got that on there. Yeah, that way we don't have
got
to
it handled.
Yeah. So good those changes, once Google and Apple approves them, then it'll go live, and then you can do an update. So that's going on. Been talking to India last night and this morning. And so Michael's with us now, so I'm just going to turn it over to him. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, dear heart. Appreciate it. And appreciate the participation and letting folks know that we're on Zoom now. If you'd pass on that information, and or if you need more information about the link, drop us a note and I'll send that to you. I was hoping Susan would be back on because she stirred a whole hornet's nest up yesterday with talking about the article I did on healing war. And so I've gone back to review it, and now I'm having to start all over again and edit the whole piece of work. But I'll share with you the edit so far. I've just gotten it started, but you know, just to sow the seeds from yesterday's conversation. So, and I talked to Susan this morning, and I sent her this kind of tongue in cheek, now look at you started, made me rewrite the whole blessed article. So the article starts out with the question, what is the ultimate answer to finally end the war between these brothers, or end any war? Of course, speaking about the Mideast. It is sad that the Bible misinterpretations are about a necessary calamity in the Middle East in order for the Messiah to return has had quote-unquote believers supporting a hostile criminal government committing genocide. Sad and insane. And fear of offending this voter bloc has kept American politicians supporting murder. Permanent resolution of war, again, a subtitle. War, being a creation of the mind of man, must be tackled at its root, the mind. Healing minds in conflict, not conflict resolution, is needed in the Mideast and throughout the world in warring countries, communities, families, and homes. Where healing in the real world meets scripture, psychology, physics, and medicine. So we're going to synthesize all of those things in this article. Carl Jung, perhaps one of the most brilliant psychiatrists of all time, wrote, whatever is rejected from the self appears through blame in a world called perception as an event. We meet ourselves, that is in our projections on others, time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life, says Jung. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. Everything that appears to irritate us about others can lead to understanding and healing oneself. The deepest truth about you is that you're designed to know yourself as love. That love is the very essence, the very energy you are made of. You are designed to be healthy, whole, cherished, and cared for. And function is love. To the degree that you are not in the experience you were designed for, your body, your mind, your relationships, and your life are going to reflect dis-ease and unhealed conflicts you hold within. When I lie to myself and tell you that you are the cause of what's happening inside of me, I become the equivalent of a full-fledged card-carrying member of the universal one-world religion of blame, guilt, suffering, war, and victimhood. The only purpose of true religion is to arrive and thrive in this life as the conscious active presence of love. If you cannot extend love to your worst enemy, you've given up your human life. And healing the problem of internal projected pain, as long as it exists in me, is the only issue that will bring resolution to my conflicts in the quote-unquote real world. All other solutions are guaranteed to perpetuate what appears to be the external problem, which is nothing but a projection of the mind in denial. After 50 years of working with people recovering from the loss of the experience of the true self, the truth of who they are, it becomes obvious to me that the instruction on the deepest principles of inner healing are urgent. And without engaging on the inner journey each religion was designed to set us on, externalization of the individual's dissociated trauma means perpetual war. Recovery is not about recovering from a disease, but about recovering from the loss of the direct experience of self as love. Please pass these tools for recovery on to others so they become available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. You cannot kill or abandon enough people. You cannot win enough wars. You cannot abuse enough people. If you cannot free yourself from the internal generational trauma and conflict, which when projected, inevitably makes of someone an enemy. Trauma, conflict, and enemy are constructs of the human mind and must be directly faced and healed from the inside. All efforts to the contrary will fail, guaranteed. If you're uncomfortable in trauma, under attack, or experiencing pain, the tools presented herein, should you choose to apply them, are going to change your life. This work will show you not how to treat your pain, for treatment is a world apart from healing. Because of the suppressive nature of drugs, especially, treatment often blocks actual healing. Healing only happens when we learn how to address and change all pain and suffering we experience at the level of cause. So that's as far as I've gotten with the rewrite, but thank you, Susan, for stirring that up and putting me back to work. Actually, I'm excited, and I appreciate the conversation this morning, Susan, that I'm actually coming to this article. It's been several months now since I've looked at it, but coming to it with a whole new mind, especially just coming out of this past intensive. So appreciation for the stimulation of bringing it up yesterday. And I think we're going to end up with a whole new level of understanding in this article. So mucho gusto, mucho gusto. And Susan, I'm assuming that you got my text this morning, and perhaps it's aroused more thought, more questioning, especially in the context of the person who's asking you to convert to their story. You know, I everybody's heard me, or most of you probably heard me use the experience of, I'm laying on the beach, I'm looking up in the clouds, and all of a sudden in the clouds I see a clown's face. Now, there's a person laying beside me on the blanket, and I excitedly point to the cloud's face. Look at the cloud's face up there. And they look at me like I'm kind of wacko and go, what are you talking about, clown face? Where? Now, if I'm the person who saw the clown's face, what am I going to do with the person beside me who snarls her nose and says, what clown? I'm going to do my best to hypnotize them. That is, I'm going to tell them the content of my brain cells. Of course, there's no clown face in the cloud, right? Where does the clown face form? But in the mind, in the shiny silver disk of one's own perception. And so in my effort to get this person to believe what I believe, clown face in the cloud, what do? I do the best I can to resonate the brain cells in them so they see the same thing as I do. You see, look up there. Now you see that there are three clouds. They see that center one, it's kind of bigger. And you see on top of it, it looks all kind of fuzzy like a clown's hair. And then if you look, you can see the big exaggerated eyes and nose. And you see the beard you see it. And what does this person do? As I get the brain cells resonating in them that are resonating in me, I've converted them to seeing, and finally this person laying on the blanket beside me, if they're subject to my hypnosis, will go, oh yeah, I see that fuzzy hair. Oh yeah, oh okay, I see the clown. Now, do either of them see a clown there? No, there's no such thing as a clown in the cloud. But when the brain cells fire in one's brain, that brain constructs a certain reality. Now, put that in the context of our conversation yesterday, where I used the metaphor of bringing someone from the jungles of South America who's never seen anything more complex than a dugout canoe, and I have them stand on the tarmac in front of a prop plane where the engines are started, and this person swears that there's a shiny silver disc. In fact, I can see them. There are 4 shiny silver discs on the front of that thing, whatever it is. Now, of course, this person is looking toward these propellers that are spinning, and because his mind can't keep up with the rate of spin, his mind generates a false picture, a shiny silver disc, which of course is no big deal. He sees a shiny silver disc, so what? Now, if he decides to take action based on what exists only in his mind, but not in the actuality, i.e., he walks over and wants to stick his fingers on the shiny silver disc to see what the friction feels like, he's in real trouble if he takes his hallucinated reality, the shiny silver disc, and tries to pretend it's true in the world, in the actuality. And so, in the same way, our offering is that whenever there's any form of hostility or fear moving in you, you're looking at a construct of your mind. You're looking at your own shiny silver disc. If you attempt to do behavior in the world based on the hallucination in your mind, the shiny silver disc, you're going to tend to run into trouble. And the objective of this work before we start moving into the world is to recognize that if you've got a shiny silver disc, i.e., a clown in the clouds, and you convince somebody else to see the clown, you're both living in an hallucinogenic world. You're living in a hologram that exists only one place, and that's between your ears. And when I hold one hallucination in my mind and you hold a different one, if it's an issue over which, let's say, for instance, in the Middle East, millions and millions and millions of dollars involved. Somebody who has the opportunity, if they can steal from this other person what belongs to them and gain millions of dollars, they'll be very committed to proving that their clown, their shiny silver disc, is true to everybody else and to the world. And when we do that, we end up with conflict and war. So the upshot of this article, and I'll be editing it over the period, probably the next couple of days, and I'll be sharing it with you as the show unfolds. If you have any thoughts, please key in, say hello, and throw in any questions, any thoughts that you have. But the upshot of the article is that war is only going to be healed when the individuals involved in that war heal themselves. And our objective with these tools is to bring into the world of perception, into the world of actuality, and in the world of people's realities, a set of tools for how to proceed with the process of healing. So, that's where we're heading, and we're delighted that you're here to be part of the conversation. And if anything that I've said has, elicited a question in you, and my thought is that also perhaps I'm wondering, Jeannie, and I'm throwing this out to Jeannie before we open the lines or invite you to hit your mute button, is I'm wondering if, yesterday, Don put his hand up before he made a comment, if maybe we should set a standard of if you put your hand up so that we have an orderly progress of conversations, and we wanted people talking over each other. So if you have a thought, if you'd raise a hand, and to raise a hand, let's see, you go down to
It's down at the bottom and it's under react, and you can do a heart or you
okay.
can,
So if you hit react, then you can
I think that does it.
raise a hand. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So if you would do that, if you have a thought for us, please click that, and then we'll have a more orderly conversation. But I hope that resonates some things for y'all. And Susan, again, thank you for that conversation this morning, and I look forward to
She said she
participating
did
in.
not get a text from you.
You didn't? Oh,
And Joan Tufts
well,
has
that's
her
weird.
hand up.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Miss Joan. Good to see you. And Susan, I'm looking at the text that I sent you at, let's see, just a second here. Let me look at the time. At 11:32, I sent you a text, but I'll go ahead and hit the button, and I am sending it as new and resending it again. So we'll see if you get it. So, Miss Joan, welcome. How are things in Arkansas?
Birmingham.
Or Birmingham. Birmingham, yeah.
Things are good here in Birmingham. I'm sorry I missed that discussion. I'll go back and listen to it. I always enjoy what Susan has to contribute.
Well, we had a good conversation yesterday, so if you go to YouTube and check out yesterday's show, that will be where you'll find that conversation.
Okay, great. I'm calling Michael because I recall that when you gave us those tests about our characteristics.
The personal code evaluation? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was working on will, and I never really understood the difference in that and willpower.
Good question. I can tell you what that is, or at least I can give you my understanding of it.
Right.
Okay, so the non-being mind, the ego mind, has a cheap copy of everything real in the spiritual dimension. So each of the spiritual faculties, what we call the non-being mind, the mind that Yeshua said, in order for you to live, you've got to die. When we live as a reflection of accumulated thoughts about who we are that are not a reflection of the truth of who we are, then we're living in what people have called the ego, ego, edging God or edging love out of our experience. And so that non-being self has a cheap copy of everything real. And so will is one of the 5 spiritual faculties, one of the faculties of this state of being. And in the personal code evaluation, when we're measuring the scores on will, what we're measuring is the abilities of this spiritual faculty. And the primary thing that will does from the spiritual level is it's designed to manage the mind. And the mind is managed through indirection. Anybody who's ever said, I'm going to quit smoking knows that they're such an expert because they've quit smoking 50 times, because you can't manage the mind directly. You've got to manage it through indirection. And an example of indirection would be, let's say I'm getting cold here in my room. I can't yell out, although with technology we're getting close to it where we can. I can't yell out and say, air conditioner, turn off and turn on the heat. I've got to go to the thermostat. Again, technology's, giving us voice control, but, I have to go to the thermostat, and by adjusting the thermostat, I can cause the air conditioner to go off and the heat to turn on. So that would be managing the heat and air by indirection. The human mind is managed by indirection. And the way you manage the human mind, and this is why it's such a key in the forgiveness process, is by the management of goals. So the faculty of will is a gentle faculty of being through which one sources what one is going to create in their world and sources it via the introduction of goals and managing their own minds. So that would be will, and will can frame a goal, select a goal for immediate attention, set a goal, cancel a goal, or choose to fulfill a goal. They're the things that will can do. Willpower, on the other hand, this is a faculty or a cheap copy, the ego copy, and that is willpower. I can force this to happen. I'll go out there in the world, and it doesn't matter who I need to beat up to get this done. I'm going to get it done. So that would be the difference between will and willpower. And I'm thinking, Joan, that it's been a while since you've done a personal code evaluation, and I suspect you've probably got a couple still available to you from some of the intensives you've done. So if you'd like to do a personal code evaluation, just say, yeah, I'd like to do it again. Let Jeannie know. She'll send you a link, and you can go ahead and do one, and then text her back and let her know when you've done it, and you'll have a new set of scores, and we'll compare them with the last time that you did the evaluation, so you can see how well you're doing and where your next challenges are.
Okay, that's great, Michael. And also, would that indirection include the activity you gave us where we link two words like, I'm trying
Right,
to
the word link process. Yes.
word. Yes,
Yeah, actually, I think since the last time you did an intensive, we've actually updated and upgraded the assignment sheet. So you'll see a difference if you've got some of your old assignment sheets. We actually now have when somebody does the personal code evaluation, you get not just what your normal assignments are if you look at what you had before, but you'll also get a word link to work with that specific challenge. You'll get a mind shifter to go with that specific challenge, and you'll get instructions on which videos out of our workshop video series would be good to watch to support you in working through that challenge. And for anybody who's listening, we're talking about when people do an intensive, this is available outside of the intensive too. If somebody just wants to take a look at where they are, they can do it independently. But when somebody does an intensive, we offer a pre personal code evaluation. And the personal code evaluation is a series of questions. It takes about 30 minutes online to answer them. It used to be that some of you will remember coming to an intensive and we did them on paper, but since we've had it put on computer, so now it can be done online. And it's based on what's called the MMPI, and the MMPI is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's kind of the gold standard of psychological testing. And what we did is we ferreted out from that MMPI a set of scales, 10 different areas that measures how your mind is doing in each of those 10 areas. So the 10 areas are stress management, honoring self, honoring others, honoring truth, freedom from fear, freedom from hostility, honoring laws of living, use of will, nutrition, digestion, toxicity, and then the consistency or validity of your scores, the way your mind is consistent in the way it answers things. So it measures those 10 areas, and then what we do when one does the evaluation is we give you 3 assignments. Your 3 lowest scores are the places where you can improve the most. And so we'll give you in those 3 areas a set of assignments that say, here's what to do. And as I say, we'll also include the word link, the mind shifter, and which DVDs would be helpful to watch in doing that. So if you want to do that, let us know, Miss Joan. I'm going to just make a presumption that you do, and I'll ask Jeannie to go ahead and send you a link if that works.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Delighted. Other than that, what's exciting in your world? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I had another knee replacement.
Bless your heart.
Well, it went well, and I have a chip in my knee. So I can't lie to my doctor about what I've been doing.
So you're now a bionic woman. That's awesome.
So now I'm riding my stationary bike while I listen to your program.
Oh, cool. Well, that'll put it right into the cells. So that's great. Awesome.
So anyway, I haven't heard recently. Is Jeannie doing well?
Well, you can ask the young lady herself. She's with us.
Jeannie, are you doing well?
I am. I've got 2 more weeks of restriction as far as how much I can lift. I can't lift more than 10 pounds, but otherwise, all the incisions in places have healed, and everything's going good.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm
She's
blessed.
doing well enough that I had to call her out of the garden because it was getting kind of hot and muggy, and she's out there working with. It's like, Jeannie, it's time to come in and take care of yourself.
I was just pulling weeds.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear it, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Well, and we had talked about, you were interested in doing the quantum still point. It looks like perhaps, now we don't have it confirmed yet, mid-November sometime, we may do a 9-day intuitive development if you wanted to tie it to an intensive, or if you just want to make a trip and do that 3-day or 5-day quantum still point, we can also, set that up.
Well, I will definitely look at that. I was just thinking earlier today about that 40-day retreat in the Ozarks where I ate nothing but raw vegetables and fruit. It was wonderful.
That was a sweet intensive, wasn't it? That was a really nice gathering of people, and a lot of gigantic work was done. I think about, remember Patrick McGann was in that intensive.
Yeah.
Friend of mine, fellow naturopath. He and I have been working together for the last 50 years, and he's just we did some work just a few weeks ago. He came up to do some training on the personal code evaluate, or pardon me, on the quantum still point, and training him to take me through the process. And so another layer, if you remember, in that intensive, he had some big stuff come up from his military time, and he went through a whole other layer of that in doing our quantum still point training when he was here a few weeks ago. So it's an awesome community. We're blessed.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. I'll get in touch with him. That's good to hear.
I'm sure he'll be delighted to hear from you.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, any other thoughts? Didn't that make sense of your question from will to willpower, ego state, being state?
Except the only thing is my ego wants to take charge of the goals. And
yes, that's called willpower. And that's where you cancel a goal in order for the ego to let go, and you bring in that gentle faculty of managing your own mind from the state of being. When you realize that genetically, when you realize that what we call the mind of man functions through every cell in the body and includes our whole genetic history, every time something presents itself in the world, resonates everything in what the scriptures called the mind of man, that includes our whole genetic history. And a lot of that is to be removed. And any goal, there are only two ways to get rid of a goal. Either you have to accomplish it or you have to cancel it.
Right.
I remember going back, this is decades ago in Atlanta. There's a woman there who did some work with, and she was, I'm not remembering exactly what age, but kind of I think maybe mid 20s, early 30s. And she had a really a major judgment about herself. And the major judgment was that she really didn't like the fact that she was very promiscuous. She'd meet a man and she'd end up in bed with him, and she just couldn't help herself no matter what she did, until she got in touch with being a young child, like 4 or 5, and she had an uncle that she just dearly cherished, just loved to be with him, loved to hang out with him, loved to sit on his knee. And as far as her memory went, there was nothing inappropriate that ever happened with her uncle, but at an early stage, her uncle just kind of pushed her away, strong-armed her away. We don't know what went on for him, but he pushed the niece away. And what she found was that her desire, her goal to have this wonderful experience she had with her uncle was driving her promiscuity. And when she was able to get rid of that, she was back in control of her own life. Like,
Wow.
it was so a goal residing in the mind that is never achieved, And we have literally, I would offer, genetically. You think about, you think about the traumas in your life. I think about the ones in mine or anybody who's listening. What kind of situations where things didn't go the way you wanted them to go, and you had goals that were unachieved. And you start realizing that in our genes are literally the unachieved goals of the generations. Think back. What do you suppose, knowing the things that have happened in our lives and the things we never were able to accomplish that we would have liked to, what do you suppose went on in our parents' lives that they wanted but never achieved, or our grandparents and their parents and their parents in a world war? And what kind of unachieved goals are there? And when you realize we have that whole history, and a circumstance shows up and resonates a goal, and that comes into effect and tends to take over our lives. If we don't know that that goal needs to be canceled, then we can be driven by all kinds of things that are simply from the past and don't really have anything to do with our lives today. That's why recognizing that our minds are designed to be managed from an awake, aware state of being where we source our goals from being. And if carbon-based memory and the generations have unachieved goals and they surface, then we know to cancel, to free ourselves of that past. Otherwise, people get locked into, they don't even, when you say to many people over the years, they say, well, why do you do that? I don't know. And then when they start doing worksheets, they go, oh my God, I had a goal I didn't even know was there.
Right.
So really canceling those goals and taking back control of your own mind, your own perceptual system, your own creative process is such an important part of this whole body of work.
And do you think that the Holy Spirit, what's the Aramaic name?
Ruka Dikucha. Yeah. Feminine elemental force in us that undoes the effects of ours and teaches us the truth. Yes.
Can she do that in bulk?
Well, one of the, I don't know if you remember, but one of the release experiences we do in listing Ruka is to cut emotional attachments to people. And yes, that seems to move things on another level. And for me, I know that that's an ongoing petition that I make, is if there's anything in me that drives my perceptual mind to something that is not appropriate for me, please show me, help me in the undoing. If there's anything in my generations, like a major request for me that has been in my mind for years of Ruka is, if I'm wanting to be aware of and be shown and heal literally every energy that has ever killed anyone in my generations, allow that to be surfaced and forgiven, removed. So yes, I think you can ask for that bulk cleaning out, and depending on the level of willingness, that's what will liberate the energy to process those things out. Absolutely.
Wow. All this just resonates so strongly with me.
I hear you. It is, when you realize the millions of people who go through their lives with no idea that it can be done, it's really criminally sad when you realize that these tools have been around for 2,000 plus years. And most people don't know that such a thing exists. That people think churchianity is about, going to church and singing songs that make you prickly inside, just like going to a good concert makes you prickly inside, and that's worship is just, so bizarre and so crazy. And recognizing that what real worship means is to function as love and emulate the presence of love of the Creator. And that these things have been hidden, that they've been lost in Greek mythology, the substitute of Greek interpretations. And one of the things that for me has become really clear, especially maybe in the last year or so, and we hear lots of people talking about all these Greek translations of Jesus' words. My offering is, for me, an insight that's come to me in the not too distant past, is that there is no translation of Jesus's words in Greek. There is not one translation. There are many interpretations. But when you realize how drastically the words have been changed, and I mean the meaning of every key word has been changed radically in the Greek, you realize these are not translations, they are interpretations. And, just to use a few examples, let's take the word love. What have the Greeks given us? Oh, well, love is sexual athletics. It's putting your head on the chopping block and suffering for someone to show them you love them. Excuse me, the word love represents human life. It's a state of being. It's what we are. So Yeshua talks about Rahman. Yeshua talks about love. And the Greeks say, put your head on the chopping block and suffer. And there's a whole theology of suffering, sacrifice, be the sacrificial lamb, as though that was Yeshua's purpose. And they're interpretations. They're not even close to translations. So, the restoration of the original meaning of these Aramaic words to me is just monumental, because it's the only thing that opens up what he was really talking about. And, when you hear him say, in essence, he says, I'm here for one thing. Here it is. Are you ready to hear it? It's not doctrine. It's not dogma. It's not religion. I'm here for one thing. I'm here to bring you life, and bring you life more abundantly. What is life? Life is love flowing through a cell. And yet we live in a culture that teaches us to do all sorts of crazy things to choke off the flow of love through our cellular structure, and therefore kill ourselves. And in less than 100 years, we take an energy system created to be eternal, and we think if somebody makes it to 100 years, they've lived a long life. And so the restoration of his words and his teachings in their original context, in the Aramaic meaning of those words, which is totally void in the Greek, to restore them opens the space of coming back to life. And that's what this work is all about.
Quite a difference.
Quite a difference, yes. And delighted to have you as part of the game and part of the team. I think about that. I oftentimes think about that time when Jeannie and I arrived in Birmingham, and you invited us to your home, and you shared the space with us as we did the workshops at Unity, and then telling us about how you'd heard about our work and how interesting it was. And as we were with you for a little while, you found a copy of the book with all your notes in my book that you didn't even remember you'd ever read or been in touch with. I think about that often, and just how sweet that space was and how welcoming you were. So thank you, and deep appreciation for that. It was fun spending that time with you.
Also, I was thinking about this earlier when I was planning to call in. The orchid that you and Jeannie bought me is still thriving.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, I'll send a picture.
Very cool.
Right.
Please do.
I will.
Sweet. Well, that's actually become, I'm not sure, Jeannie, how many orchids do you have now? That's become kind of the flower that, when an occasion requires it, I get for Jeannie. It's the orchids. So
I have 3 right now, and when we moved here from Heartland, I gave Magda the ones that I had there because I didn't want them to go through the travel, and she said they're still thriving. So, and
yeah, that's cool.
Joan, I sent you an email on the personal code, and Sally, says she'd like to retake it, and you have one out there too. So I'll send you the link if you don't remember what it is, so that you can retake it as well. And Susan
Yeah,
sent me a text.
if you've done an intensive and, each time we do an intensive, you get a pre-evaluation for before the intensive. And then at the end of the intensive, you do the evaluation again. And then there's always a third one. If you haven't taken it, then you've got an evaluation out there. And if you want to take a look at what your scores are today and you never did do that third evaluation, it's there and available. Or if if you've never done the evaluation and you want to, independent of an intensive, you can purchase two of those, and it's $100 for two of them. So if anybody's interested in, then that gives you a link to two evaluations. And when you do the evaluation, you let Jeannie know, and she will send you back a full report on what your scores are, what your challenges are. And then, of course, we're here with the show so that if you're looking at those challenges and you're not sure what to do with them and how they work, then we'll explain them and support you in them. And of course, when we do that, there'll be somebody else who's got the same challenge who's listening and goes, oh, that's what I do. And so everybody gets to benefit. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And so, Sally, go ahead.
This morning, when my mind, non-being mind, was supposedly thinking about how many times I've set this goal to clean off my dining room table, and it hasn't happened. And I keep being reminded of the scripture from Paul where he says, I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things I want to do. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
Well, what
interpretation.
What Paul's acknowledging there is that he has no idea how to do forgiveness. Specifically, he says, why is it the things I would do, I cannot do? And he actually says, the things which I hate are what I do.
Right.
He does not know how to go into his own carbon-based memory, clear out the goals, cancel the goals, and clean up that part of his mind. That, sadly, the man never met Yeshua. And sadly, what he's admitting there is, I don't know how to do forgiveness. I don't know how to clean out the goals that drive me, that keep me off track. He doesn't know that forgiveness means cancel a goal, which collapses perception, which gives you access to the part of your mind that's hidden from you and gives you the opportunity to clean it out. Paul didn't have a clue. And sadly, many people in the world today, I might even say the majority of people in the world who think they're following Yeshua, are actually following Paul. They're really following a Pauline gospel, not Yeshua's gospel.
Right.
And forgiveness is totally missing from it. I mean, there's the language of, let them off the hook for what they've done, but that's got nothing to do with Yeshua's teaching on forgiveness. Properly, that's Greek pardoning. So let them off the hook, forgive them, is about pardoning them and then engaging in Yeshua's actual work. Once I've pardoned the person that I've been blaming maybe all my life, then I pick up the tool of forgiveness and I go inside myself and clean up what's in me that drives me to do the things that I really don't want to do. Paul didn't know how to do that. And that's why most of the world today, following a Pauline gospel, have no idea what forgiveness is. And they're doing exactly what Paul, many of them, I'm sure, when you see them raging and all the stuff that goes on, I'm sure that they'd say, why is it the things I would do, I cannot do?
Yep.
So I'd suggest maybe a few worksheets around your dining room table, and bingo, you'll probably find it's done.
Okay.
I mean, who'd think that a dining room table could bring up forgiveness opportunities? But watch as you do those worksheets and see what you're touching into under the surface, and what you'll find, there are things attached that you never knew about.
Right. Absolutely. I'm
Oh,
so
sweet.
grateful for this program. Thank you, Michael and Jeannie. It's such a huge commitment on your part.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's all, I love what Richard Bach says in his book, Illusions. If you haven't read Illusions, get the book and read it. It's awesome. We teach best that which we most need to learn. And so you can see that what I'm still learning is forgiveness. And so I'm doing my work too as we go along. And I'll offer, I've said this a few times on the show lately, and I don't know whether you've been on when I have, Joan, but I'm really clear in recognizing that for me personally, in terms of my own personal inner process, although I've been developing this work for the last 50 years and doing it personally, that the deepest and most important work that I've done with forgiveness has been in just the last 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So we do teach best that which we most need to learn. And, kind of sometimes they talk about the Scots having this, hard head. Well, that's my history. So what can I say?
Right. Yeah, I can remember my mother calling me hard-headed.
Well, not only did my mother call me hard-headed, but one of her terms, one of her phrases to me often was, and if your head wasn't attached, Michael, you'd leave it behind too.
Yeah.
So it is a process. So delighted to have you on the team and being part of it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Lots of love.
I'm complete. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Nice to hear from you. So, Miss Susan, did that text come through? I sent it again.
He said it did not.
It did not. Well, that's weird. Well, let's see if I'm sending it to an incorrect number. Let me just look. Maybe I'm sending it to Tim, but let me just take a quick look here. Let me open it. Contact details. Hmm. Well, I don't know. I don't know how it's happening, but I'm sending it to the 4141 number, Susan. And I've done it twice. And according to my record, 4141 is the number that I have for you. And you've gotten texts on it before, I know. So I don't know how, unless maybe it's too long and it's being blocked or something. So what I will do is I will copy it and I'll jump onto my email and I will open Susan. And I'm sending it to your Gmail address. Here's the thing that you inspired. Rewrite. There we go. I've now sent it via email. So we know there is a conspiracy if you don't get the email too. So we'll see what happens. So once again, welcome.
Sorry, I'm not too good at this Zoom thing yet.
Technology. It's so much fun when it works. But we can hear your voice, so you're loud and clear, so you got that much figured out.
Yeah, I'm back in. I hang up
Good.
every once in a while. I'm intentional.
Anyway, you inspired a rewrite. I've started to rewrite the article again, and I did the first part of it. Was all the space I had to do this morning, but I did that, and actually I appreciate the fact you brought it up, Ann, because I think there's going to be a whole new level of clarity in the article. So I'm working on it. So by next Wednesday, I'll hopefully much sooner than that, and if you want to resend it in the new form out to the group for next Wednesday's meeting, I'll have it redone and get the whole
Sure.
new article off to you. I think we've got a new level of clarity.
I just sent it out again, explaining that you were planning to come on the meeting, but certainly another version is fine. As soon as I get it, I'll send it to them.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, anything else on your mind, dear heart?
Oh, boy. Well, no, not. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Well, I see Sally's unmuted her phone. So, Sally, do you have a thought for us? And I'm not hearing Sally's voice, so I assume she doesn't have a thought for us, or maybe has stepped away from her computer. But I see that your line is unmuted, so, oh my goodness, we're down to the last minute. So, Sally, I guess if you have a thought for us and you're away from your phone or your computer at the moment, then we'll have to do it tomorrow because our 2 hours is up, or our hour is up. And so, and I understand that Dr. Tim is going to be going on a week's vacation, and with all he's got on his plate, his hour is going to be blank for the next week. I think
No,
it's
that starts on the 13th. and
starts
goes
on the
through
13th.
13th to the 23rd.
So just make a note, if you're used to listening to Dr. Tim's show, from the 13th to the 23rd, he just doesn't have the space to create, replacement shows. So he's just going to be blank for that week. And of course, we'll be carrying on, and appreciate you joining us and holding the space for each of you to have the best year yet of your eternal lives. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and blessings.